foundational figure, or power, we should say, in the art world today, and a singular persona besides, collector Harald Falckenberg. I want to thank our partners for their support of today's program, the University of Michigan Museum of Art, or UMA, and the Byrd Hoffman Watermill Foundation, and our series partners, Arts at Michigan and Michigan Radio 91.7 FM. Being Valentine's Day, I have a special announcement for students at the school in our midst, which could be seen as a sort of a special Valentine. Today's presentation marks the inaugural event of a new partnership between the Stamps School of Art and Design and the Byrd Hoffman Watermill Foundation, which operates the Watermill Center at the East End of Long Island. This center was founded by theater practitioner Robert Wilson, who most of you will remember graced our stage about a year ago, to provide a supportive environment for emerging artists who embrace avant-garde, multidisciplinary approaches to explore new ideas and foster their development. So for the past 17 years, the principal activity at the Watermill Center has been the International Summer Program, which is led by Robert Wilson himself, and where 60 to 100 artists from over 30 nations gather for 5 weeks of intense creative exploration and artistic development at the Watermill Center. And so this new partnership guarantees a placement for one or more of our students at the Stamps School to participate in the Watermill Summer Program. So all of our art and design students are welcome to compete for this spot or two. You can do so by submitting an application through the Watermill Center. The deadline is March 6th, so you have 3 weeks to get your stuff together here. It's an amazing place to be. There are amazing people that come there. It's a wild gathering. Whoever gets to go will be a very lucky person. You can find the information. We posted it today on the school's website, and an email announcement will also go out to all students tomorrow with directions to apply. This partnership also includes shared programming for speakers, curators, exhibitions, and the presentation of work developed at the Watermill during residencies. And we commence today with Dr. Falckenberg as our first Watermill endorsed presentation. Robert Wilson himself can be found officially to be named as laudator. I like that word, laudator, one who lauds. He is a laudator of Harald Falckenberg. If you would like to meet Harald and ask him questions, I'm sure you will have questions for him. He's an incredibly interesting person, as I said. We will have our regular Q&A in the screening room directly following his talk in here. Please do remember to turn off your cell phones. And now a few thoughts for you as an introduction to our distinguished guest today. Harald Falckenberg is one of the world's most admired and most critical contemporary art collectors. He is known for his ability to stay ahead of the art market. He was among the first collectors to acquire works by major figures like Martin Kippenberger, Richard Prince, Jonathan Meese, and Mike Kelly, a very own alum from the University of Michigan School of Art and Design. His collection comprises over 2,000 works, with the emphasis on German and American contemporary art over the past 30 years. The Falckenberg collection is based at the Phoenix Hallen. This is a 65,000 square foot former factory building in Hamburg's Harburg district. ARTnews chose Falckenberg as one of the world's top 200 collectors. He's received the Art Cologne Prize and the Montblanc de la Culture Patronage Award. He's published numerous books on art. He teaches art theory at Hamburg's Academy of Fine Arts. Now, all told, Falckenberg is a man of many hats beyond the art world. Professionally, he's a manufacturer of gasoline nozzles at one of the only 2 manufacturers in the world of such things, Elaflex. He is the co-owner and managing director there. He was also once an accomplished golfer, but in the mid-90s, he decided to give up sport for art. And then he commenced to collect and amass this collection, which includes, as you will see, some very arduous work. It has been said that he claims to not like art at all. Rather, he describes himself as a reporter on art and artists. He thinks of the art in his collection as socio-critical rather than beautiful or sentimental. He says, "I try to get away from enthusiasm, from liking or loving art. Instead," he looks to ask questions such as, what are the conditions that somehow force the artist to do this or that? He believes, quote, an artwork at the end of the day is an expression of a certain development in society. According to Falckenberg, art can be subversive, grotesque, playful perhaps, but also socio-politically infiltrative and poetic. Please welcome Dr. Harald Falckenberg.
Hello, thank you very much for coming. I believe everything about myself is already said, yes? But this critical view I might have about art is perhaps more very cool aspect or cool approach to art. And it is perhaps part of the people from Hamburg. I come from Hamburg, northern Germany, and it's nearly Scandinavia. And, and once a famous art historian said about Hamburg people, if Hamburg people have the choice between the paradise and a lecture about the paradise, they will always choose the lecture. I think that might perhaps describe what also Christina wanted to say. I'm 69 years old, and indeed there are several personalities in me, as necessarily also in you. And there is always the question, why do you collect art? I don't want to make it too lengthy for the discussion afterwards, therefore I say quite frankly to you, I don't know, yes? And I would like to counter-ask people, do you know why you have picked up a certain profession? I don't know. The best thing perhaps would be I go to a psychiatrist and lay down on a couch, and yeah, the result is very questionable. The result is an open result, as you know, if you have dealt a little bit with psychoanalysts, and you will perhaps come out of these sessions as a new man or person, but you don't know exactly what it is. I think the best and the only good for me explanation was given by Freud. Yes. Freud said, if the parents want to give freedom to very young children so that they get adult, the children are thrown into a vacancy, into a new world without anything. So they stuff up this world with tools, with animals, with teddies, and all this stuff, and the children can't have enough of it, yes? And Freud continues, if these children become older, but not really adult, they will collect art, yes? So I wanted to say that dealing with art is always a kind of compensation, yes? But, okay, that is perhaps enough of general ideas about art. I have started in 1994, and but I have done a lot in art before. I was engaged in several clubs and associations and also in museums. I'm still president of the oldest German art association, Hamburg Kunstverein, settled in 1817. I just saw that the Michigan University was founded in 1817. So there are always some results by coincidence which come together, And you have to be open for coincidences. That would be my most important message for art. Open yourself for coincidences. When I flew in to Detroit, the place to come in was Wayne County Airport. And Wayne was the birthplace of Mike Kelly. Yes, Mike Kelly, I would say one of the most important younger artists of internationally and also from America, who committed suicide in January or February, I think January last year. And yes, the show I curated in Watermill for my old friend Robert Wilson was a tribute to Mike Kelly. And there I made the acquaintance of Christina. And so things come together. When we speak of friends and artists, I did not have to think only of Mike Kelly when I came down on Wayne County Airport. I had to think of another artist who died only a few weeks ago, Franz West from Vienna, a big friend of Mike Kelly, by the way. Mike Kelly admired the Vienna Actionists. I have a very similar approach to art as Mike Kelly did have it. And naturally, a couple of days before, I think just 4 days before, we have to confirm the death of Richard Artschwager, also one of the heroes of my collection. So I'm here, and I think these connections are much more important than my person, I must say. And so I make a bow to these great artists. This is maybe the real reason that I'm here. I started in 1994, and when you start collecting, you must make a decision, or you must make several decisions. But one important decision is, do you want to collect artworks to own them, to have precious, valuable artworks in your property? Some families have it over centuries, such valuable artworks. These collectors I call the collectors. Yeah? But there are is also another kind of collector who doesn't care so much about property of art works, who is convinced that these artworks will go to some place after his death or even earlier, and that the property of artwork is only of second importance. And these collectors generally engage themselves in the art world. They try to help artists. They try to help museums. They are friends with other collectors, so they are in what we call the art system. They are engaged, positively engaged in the art system. I don't speak about the speculators who just want to earn some money, quick money, by buying and selling works within a short time. I personally believe that I belong to the second group. You might guess, yes, and therefore one has to make, when you are engaged like that, and if you see the negotiating, or not negotiate in a money sense, negotiate with art in a personal way, also to involve yourself and to develop yourself, because art opens the eyes and sharpens your mind. And this is, if you do it like that, then you naturally have to do it yourself. You cannot do it by a consultant. Yes, rich people who want to have the best and most valuable artworks, they look for art dealers and consultants to give good advices. One of the great advisors is Larry Gagosian here in the United States, yes? And yeah, that is, the collectors don't look even anymore for the art. They say, I've bought it from Larry Gagosian and are sure that this will rise the price within a short time. I heard a joke about Larry Gagosian, the last Art Basel. There was a guest in one of these very expensive apartments of a hedge fund manager in New York, and this guest stood before an artwork, and he was so impressed that he was there around 15 minutes until this hedge fund manager came, and he asked him, "Oh, can you tell me from whom this wonderful artwork is?" Yes, it's from Gagosian, yes. This is some kind of how art is dealt as well. If you want to be in this group or think that you want to engage yourself for art also as a social engagement, then you have mostly to go for contemporary art, for young contemporary art, because for older art you need often need the expertise of consultants. But for younger art, this is a little bit different. You meet the artist, you speak with the artist, about artist, and then you come into this field step by step. And there is also a lot of coincidence how you start this art collecting. I was not sure. I must say, yeah, I tell you the story how it started with me. There was an artist, Werner Büttner, who is quite an important artist in Germany, professor for art as well. And he was in the group of Martin Kippenberger, Martin Oehlen, and Georg Herold for influential artists of our time. And Martin Kippenberger today is really a star. Only some become stars, many not, but they're good as well. So, yeah, I drank beer with him in bars, and we talked to each other until he separated from his wife, and he didn't find a place to live. So I offered him a little apartment in my house, and he stayed there for 2.5 years. And he couldn't pay the cost for the divorce. And I said, okay, give me some works. He gave me some works of Kippenberger. That was in 1994. Kippenberger of him, of Albert Oehlen. I got them, I think, for nothing. I don't know. I had to pay for the costs of the divorce. That was my entrance fee to art. And yeah, and that became a virus afterwards, because he explained, okay, if you go for our art is in direct context with American art. Yes, it's a direct context with Paul McCarthy, with Richard Prince, John Baldessari, Mike Kelly, and yes, okay. I had to first learn a little bit about these guys, and finally I followed this advice, and at that time you could still buy an artwork of, a good artwork of Richard Prince for $5,000, yes? That were good times, so to say, yes? And so it developed. This is not always a very logical process. It is something where you go, and the art I have then collected was only a certain section of art, which could be described as art with pun, art with grotesque, art as counterculture. Yes, not the art you usually would like in your living room. Yes, you have to change your mind a little bit to accept them. Yes, I also I'm a little bit refusal to hang them into my apartment. I have this big museum, you've heard, I think that's enough. I don't have to see them in my apartment as well. Anyway, so this is how it started. And so the backbone of my collection are these 4 German artists and the American artist I told you. And then I went for older artists, because you can say that these artists are in the tradition of a neo-Dadaistic movement and in the grotesque movement, which goes back to the counterculture in the Renaissance. Yes, so it's a long tradition, this pun and counterculture art. It's not just an invention of the Beat Generation or something like that. Here, I'm here in the Middle West, not far from St. Louis, where Burroughs was born. William S. Burroughs. Anyhow, yeah, you see, I'm always getting away from my way a little bit, but this is intentional. So you have to get away from your ways to get out of the world of rules and to be free a little bit. What I said, yeah, but. Year by year, I more and more defined this section of art I collected. And so after these 8 to 10 artists I spoke, American, German, there were artists, neo-Dadaistic artists before. I only speak of general idea and Richard Artschwager. Yeah. And in Europe, Vienna actualists, yeah, and Hanne Dabo. I don't know whether you know the names. I don't want to say too many names, but some I have to name. And only after 10 years of collecting, I started to collect younger art. Younger art, if you take them from America, Jason Rhodes, who died from horse tranquilizers, yeah? Yes, young age. And we speak of, yes, if you want so, also of Mike Kelly, but Meese in Germany, and a couple of other guys. It is very difficult to evaluate young art. If you evaluate art of some time before, you have many essays, you can look into books, you can talk to people. But for young art, you must develop yourself a certain idea how to evaluate them. My idea was, after collecting 10 years such critical art, yes, to also collect young art which have a relation to these artists before. And that is somehow the key to my collection. Many of the younger artists have professors, have people, or professors of my collection are teachers of these younger artists which are in my collection. So all in all, now we can go and see something. This is the idea of all, in the end, how I collect and how I will also continue to collect. Because I feel, I don't feel it would be good for me to just buy art which is described in the art market as the new sensation and this and this and this. I'm not with them so much, I must say. So starting with the divorce of my friend, I found a line that should be the message. So I think we now go and have a look of something which was done, and I hope I can, wait a moment. Is there, oh yes. So that is the building in the factory of our company. It's a family company where I still work as CEO, by the way. Yeah? And that's the building for the collection. I think very similar to some buildings here in Detroit and in Arbor, I saw. Old factory buildings from the beginning of the 20th century. This is the center, and there are 5 levels, which go, you see down here the lower level, and then you have a passage, a path through these buildings, where in older time tires were made, yes? Tires for cars. For exhibitions, this construction is quite well because you have many different walls which are where you can put one artwork for itself, and the walls have some connection with each other. If you know what a white cube is, where you have one white big room, it is very critical to curate shows in white cubes, very difficult. But if you have walls for the artworks themselves, it is much easier to do. This is, by the way, a work. This is the next by Mike Kelly, the Wayne-born artist. Yes?
His art teacher is here today.
Oh, yes. I hope I will talk to him. Yeah, he was in an Arbor undergraduate, for the undergraduate. High school. Oh, still in high school in Wayne. Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah. Later he went to CalArts for the graduate studies. Yeah. This is one of his last work. It is typical. It is one of the main works in my collection, by the way. If I say a few words about that, because it's so related to this area. These are studies about Candor. Yes, you know Candor is the birthplace for, what was the name? Give me the voice. Superman. Right? Superman, I think. Yes, I'm not so familiar with those things. And Superman wanted to build, after the destruction of Candor by enemies, wanted to build up a new Candor, and the comics invited the readers to make proposals for a new modern Candor. So the idea of building something new when something is distracted, an old idea in art. And you see many of the comics are on the wall there. And this is a work of progress. I made a contract with Mike that as long as I have this work in my property, I have to invite 2 architectural students every month to make models according to the comics there, but models of their own. And here you see in front those models. If the models would cover the surface of this plate, then I was forced, or not forced, I was obliged to send these models to Los Angeles, and then he would make artworks out of these models. He would put them into glass and put glass something around. I made all the work with my students, and these single artworks, I don't say how expensive that was, under Gagosian prizes. Okay, that was the work. This is one very strange work, where this constant work. Now, after the death of Mike Kelly, we have to see how the estate will follow that up. It's a question which many times happens if you have a conceptual work of an artist. What will happen to the work of him when he has died? Yeah, this is Jonathan Meese. This is a famous Swiss artist, Thomas Hirschhorn. Dirk Schreiber, living in New York City. I hope it is okay for you. What is that? Oh, that is interesting work. You see Mr. Bush, yes? I heard he has just started to paint, yes? Hallelujah for him. Oh, that's a nice work. Oh, nice is good. This is a work of a New York artist, John Kessler, and it's consisting out of videos and this big work, and it is about September 11, and it is about all these videos are no videos. They are produced by supervising cameras. So if the visitors come into this artwork, they are filmed, supervised, and that will appear on this screens. And also some mechanical movements with constructions. It's difficult to explain, but it's a fantastic work where you go into, you are quite innocent, and suddenly you are in a world where you are supervised all the time. Yes. Okay. I hope my English is good enough, but I can't do it better. This is one of, wait a minute, I must see whether I speak too long. No, I'm good in time. So this is an artwork of Paul Teck. Paul Teck is a famous artist, but only for artists. He was gay and he was Catholic, and that was a mixture which was not very successful in the 60s. Gay was okay, but Catholic, as in addition, that was a little bit too much for him. And this is a work against minimalism. So he made these plastic boxes, yes, and into the plastic boxes he included, into the plastic boxes he included meat. It looked absolutely like meat from wax, yes, and his saying was, the minimalist artists have forgotten that there's also always some meat in play in life, yes, and not only minimal forms, yes. Paul Teck became a famous artist, and when I say he is famous artist only for the artist, he's one of the supermodels for the term artist, yes. There are artists which are known by artists, but by no one else. Yeah, that's also the flag. Also, this also all works from Paul Teck. This is a famous work of general idea with the pills against AIDS. Yeah, and then you see some of the photographs in the background. Yeah, I think I go further. Sometimes, see, I have the room where also motorcycles can hang from the ceiling, yes. And it's John Bock, one of the young stars in Germany. Again, the construction of the house. This is a Zeppelin from Sarah Lucas, a Zeppelin from concrete. So exactly the contrary to what could fly, yes? This is 1.5 tons, this little piece. Simon English. This is Art Schwager here, the left one here, from Art Schwager. Yeah, this is again from Jonathan Meese. Some rooms of him. I think they are the self-understood. Okay? You see, it is, he refers in this scene to this Sean Connery. He loves B-movies, yes? I think the whole artwork is a B-movie, yes, somehow. Yeah, again. And then in the bottom level, you have the possibility to pull out, also as a visitor, to pull out artworks. And there you can spend hours if you have the patience, yes? There's Daniel Richter in the background. You just pull it out, and it's Raymond Pettibone. Yeah, that was a little insight into the collection. Yeah, we still have some time if you want to talk about the art system today. That might be interesting also for especially the younger people, also the older, but especially for the younger, because I'm also professor, you have heard, in art at the Academy in Hamburg, and every 3 weeks I'm asked by someone, how can I manage to earn much money with art? Yes. And this is really a difficult question. I was not able to answer it to myself when collecting, and so it's rather difficult to tell it to him. But you must see what you want. Again, as the collector, you have to make again the decision whether you make what I say critical art, or whether you want to make art for the market. Yes, and art for the market is clear. Many people collect art for showing off, to establishing and prove a certain social status, and many times those are successful managers who know every time what is correct, yes, also in art. They've never dealt with art, but they know exactly what is good in art, what they feel is good. They are the law, yes? And the outcome is naturally simply to say kitsch, yes? And this is the first advice to a young artist I can give. Make kitsch. If you want to be happy, do it, yeah? That's personally not the correct answer, but also with kitsch, you need a profound background, because the art market or the art system is today split into dominated, split into various sections, and dominated by many causes, by roots, by certain influences. I just want to point out the most evident and most important. There is today not only the private market for selling artworks, even bigger is art for exhibitions. We call it exhibition art. Those are art for the documenta. Those are art for biennales and triennales. We have today 120 biennales and triennales. You can go to Santiago de Chile, you can go everywhere, and you will find a biennale or a triennale. And these artworks are very specific, because the artists do not make art of their own. They make art what the curators want. The curators have a special idea, for instance. They want to have art about the problems in a society or in a city. and they want to make a new model of a city, or they want to discuss gender questions and the discrimination of women, always, yes. And so the artists have to do artworks which suit to the ideas of these curators, and they cannot make small artworks. The artworks generally have dimensions which are not suitable for any homes of private collectors. They are, furthermore, in nearly 90% multimedia arts. That means they are films, videos, installations, and everything together. So this, exhibition art, which started its success in the early 90s of last century, has become a very important branch of art, yes? And the second, naturally, the private art market, and there have been also significant changes in the last years. You know perhaps that in older days, there were only art dealers who sold art. Art dealers are persons who do not represent an artist. They look for artworks and try to get the best price they can get. And these art dealers were discriminated after the Second World War, and they were pushed into the background by what we call gallerists. The gallerist, he's responsible for the art of an artist from the beginning to the end, over years. He follows his way, he makes exhibitions for him, and he invests a lot of money for the artist, sometimes gets it back. Yeah, there are cases. And this is the responsible way to deal with art, was said. And if you see the big art fairs of the Art Basel, for instance, or also Art Cologne, the two biggest art fairs, or the pioneer art fairs, also an Emery show, by the way, art dealers were not allowed there. Only gallerists could come, but art dealers were understood to be unrespectful to art. Yeah? That has changed today. If you see the business of big gallerists, for instance, Hauser and Wirth or David Swirner in New York City, this is still the place to deal with art, to sell art and buy art. They have around 30 to 40 artists, which they represent in their first nature of gallerists. And naturally, it is not clear how they could really assist them in this quick world where the art market has become globally. Today there are more art buyers from the Soviet Union than from Western Europe, yes? Yeah? And I don't want to speak of all the Chinese buying art, yes? Because this art system is so quickly, the artist, or let me say one of the 30 artists, asked, "Dear David, when will I have my next exhibition?" Oh, 30 artists. Maybe in 3 or 4 years. Hey, what's 3 or 4 years? I must have my success today. And that is what they can't really do. And that is the deeper reason why that has 2 consequences. The first consequence is that they have to manage their business today also in a second personality as art dealers. Over 50% of the business of the big gallerist is today the business of art dealer. There they get some work from somewhere, but whether it's the work of their own artist or not, it doesn't count. And it doesn't count also the price. They try to get the best prices, whatever. The ideology of art dealers is totally different from that of a gallerist. A third very, very important influence was that since nearly exactly 2000, yes, the big auction houses, Sotheby's, Christie's, and Phillips, yes, started or stopped to buy old tables and old paintings only, but went right away into the young contemporary art market. And that seemed to be a catastrophe for the gallerists. It came into defense. And there was a big fight in the beginning, but eventually they couldn't change the situation. Today, nearly half of the business sales of Christie's and Sotheby's is contemporary art. This is really astonishing. And one of the let me say tricks or maneuvers to get along with the auction houses was that the gallerist sent in, for instance, of an artist, I tell you a true example, of Daniel Richter. They sent in 3 better works, and with a group of 7 gallerists, they made offers until the selling price was $450,000. The selling price before in the gallery was $50,000. So that was a change from one day to the other, so to say. And David Zwirner, who was one of these protagonists, had a show with Daniel Richter 2 months later, and very generously he sold these works for $300,000. Yeah? So that is a very practical example for how many tricks are done today. Auction houses are no longer auction houses only. They have the pre-sales and the after-sales. They have own galleries, and the bigger galleries today prefer to cooperate with these big auction houses. So that is all for the consequences for the collector. We can only see as collectors a little bit of this rude plays, games which are played in the backstage. Yes, we can only guess what is going around. The better it is if you, like me, say, okay, I do my own way and don't care too much for all the business of what is going on with the auction houses, the art dealers, and the gallerists today. And for the artist, it is very difficult now to decide. This pushing the market up with the assistance of the gallerist by the auction houses. That you hear Andy Warhol is 7 million, 22 million, but it was not expensive enough, and they say we must break now the $100 million. They have done it 3 times, not more, but they thought 1 year ago they would constantly cross this magic line. Yeah, but for young art, it is clear it becomes more and more difficult to have time to develop their art. And so there are many small galleries which are closing in these days. In Berlin, already nearly 30% of the young galleries have closed their doors because they don't have the time and the money to play this game, which is played by the great galleries, art dealers, and auction houses. And there is one counterattack of the artists who are no longer really represented by gallerists, are organizing themselves today. Yes, the best example was Damien Hirst. Yes, this was a very, very good example. He didn't care for his gallerists and art dealers, Gagosian and White Cube gallerist in London. He engaged 40 young artists, and within 1 year, he made 120, I think, 120 artworks, and made an auction at Sotheby's. I don't know whether you have heard of it. They sold these 140 artworks for $175 billion, yes. And the obscure thing about it, I think it was the 13th of September. This auction was done on the day when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. Yeah? This is really something you have to remember. An artist with an own institution, with a shop, yes, like in the Renaissance, where they had own workshops for the work, and they don't care for any assistance of their galleries anymore. And that is today often done. That's the day with Jeff Koons. That is the way with Jonathan Meese and also Amseln Reimle, not a very, Eliasson perhaps you know, not a very important artist, but he has already 40 people working for him. And if a gallery says, oh, you are my artist, he says, oh, come on, I go where I want. And so they have possibilities to show their work more often. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm in time now. And I hope to have given you a certain survey about what is happening now and how one can deal with art or deal with art, yes. And I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.